Hi, my name is Heiko. Today I want to show you how I made this little adorable steampunk style nightlight for the bedroom of my little son. Stay tuned. Okay guys, let's just jump right into it. Here's the first glimpse of how it will look like. This is an old fairy light and an empty gin bottle. Yeah, I emptied it by myself, not in one day, but anyhow. The rest of the project is as this is an upcycle project, more or less for free. Most probably you have other things laying around in your shop. Okay, first I build a template that covers the design. You can do that with a CAD program as well, but I more like objects to have a real good impression of size, diameters, and yeah, a feel of the material and the project. As you can see, I just took an old cutlery holder from IKEA and an empty spray can to mark the outlines of the bottle holder. Then I cut out everything with a jigsaw. That's pretty straightforward, nothing fancy. With the belt sander and a file I gave the template its final shape, and later on I drilled the holes that I want to copy to the single work pieces, and that all will make sense in a minute, as you will see that I have to drill different holes not fully through the bottle holders. Now it's time to make the first parts. We'll copy the outlines of the template and just cut it out. I glued the parts together with double-sided tape. That makes it very easy to sand them together so that they are absolutely the same after the process. After some filing and sanding, we're now drilling the hole in the upper part of the bottle holder. And this is one of the holes that is not drilled fully through. This hole now is for the cable of the fairy light later on. Next is the cutout for the lower bottle holder. I took my router with compass and adjusted it to the diameter of the bottle. With a router table I trimmed the edges and give him a really nice profile. Yes, you can do that with a normal router as well, but if you do that, make sure you clamp the workpiece real good, otherwise it's dangerous that something is flying around or you mess up the whole piece. It's time to drill the holes for the battery holder fully through. A spade bit will do the trick. I drilled another hole for the cables. As I have to pull the little wires from the battery holder through that hole later on, I made that a little bit wider. So this is the base plate, nothing special here, just trimmed the edges. And here you can see, as I put the bottle with the bottle holders on, how the light will look like. It is time to do the battery holder. If you want to solder copper and brass, you should give the parts a thorough sanding with a fine grit to remove any oils and grease from the surface. First I put the soldering flux on the surface of the parts, then I heated up everything with the torch evenly to apply the solder. Between the fitting and the batteries was too much play, so I took a little plastic tube, cut it to length and glued it into the fitting. You might ask why the removal of the play of the battery is that important. As a spring will later on push against the back of the battery to maintain connection, it is very important that the battery can't move left and right. As you can see here, I really like to reuse old stuff. So to mix and prepare my two-component adhesive, I usually use old cups like old yogurt cups or stuff like that, and some scrap wood. For the back part of the battery holder, I soldered the push spring into the cap of the fitting. And here again it's sanding, applying the flux, heating up everything and applying the solder. As you can see, the spring works pretty nice. As I test the spring, I also measured the position for the positive connector of the battery holder. The insulated positive connector inside the battery holder, yeah, that sounds like much, but it is honestly just a piece of plywood I sanded to shape. After sanding to shape and everything fits fine, I drilled a hole through it and put a copper connection through that. Just a copper wire with a little dot of solder. Here you see how the positive connector will work inside the copper tube. Next is the switch. I used a copper lid to place the switch on top. It's just a normal push switch, and for this I drilled a hole into that lid and glued the switch in. Now for the wiring we have to integrate a resistor into the circuit to limit the current. You have to do that, otherwise your LEDs will die a sudden death. Now how to calculate what kind of resistor, what kind of values you need, I can do a little video if necessary or needed. So for this I have 4.5 volts with this 3 AAA or AA batteries, doesn't matter. So you should have a resistor with a value between 200 and 600 ohms. So the lower the value of the resistor, the brighter the light. To have enough space for all the cables that are running from the batteries to the switch and to the LED light, we have to make a cutout in the copper tube. You won't see this cutout afterwards, as the opening is then congruent with the upper bottle holder. Meanwhile, I gave all the wooden parts a good sanding, and now it's time to apply the paint job. Okay, now the paint is drying, so we have now the time to do all the rest of the wiring. This little hole now will be my ground connection. From there the wire goes direct to the switch, and then from the switch again to the fairy lights. With a little soldering iron it might take a while to heat up all the metal you solder the wire in, but in that case you have to be a little bit careful, because the switch might melt if you apply too much heat. As I already mentioned, one wire to the switch and the other side of the switch goes directly to the fairy light. Pretty easy job so far, a little bit shrink tube on and off you go. Everything is prepared for the final assembly. We install the bottle in the upper bottle holder. Here I have to adjust the cable length a little bit in that way that you can't see the shrink tube but just the fairy lights. As we install the positive connector and hold it with a little screw in the copper tube, it's important that you first bring the whole copper tube through the lower bottle holder, otherwise the screw head won't fit through the hole for the copper tube. At that stage I really recommend to check if you have a short somewhere. So check if ground is all over the copper tube and the positive connection is just on the red wire. And check if the voltage from the batteries is correct. Here everything works properly, so we can go on. As a fastening mean for the copper tube, I just use a little wood screw. It will prevent the copper tube from moving. As we have now all the wires on the back side of the base plate, it's time to connect them and hide them there. I soldered the wires together and insulated them with shrink tube. It is very handy if you have matching colors for positive and negative connections, as well as for the shrink tube. It is then very easy later on if you have to change the design or to repair something. I hid the cables in the notch on the backside of the base plate and added a drop of hot glue to hold them in place. Hey guys, we are finished with the project and I really like the result. My son, he loves his new nightlight. It is still working with the same battery since 4 weeks now. It's very good. If you like that project too, give me a thumbs up and feel free to subscribe for more upcoming projects or post a comment below. I hope I see you soon and happy crafting.